Right, let's have a little discussion now. We're going to talk to Tom Cole, who's head of policy at the People's Vote, and also Ben Harris-Quinney, chairman of the Bow Group. They are a group who wish to leave. And let's see where we get with that. Where should we start? Should we start with leave? Let's talk with Ben first of all. Hello, Ben.
Hello.
Hi. So this is the question I want to ask you, and I want to ask Tom. Is should we have a people's vote?
Well, as many Brexiteers have said, we've already had one. And I think at the very least, if there is to be another people's vote, it has to be endorsed by the people. So a major political party would need to stand on the manifesto commitment to have another referendum, and they would need to be elected, and
but they're as split
take that forward in a democratic process.
as the rest of the country, Ben. That's the problem, isn't it? I mean, both the major parties are as split as the rest of the country. So
yes,
it's.
But I think, we live in a democracy, and we've had the democratic process of the people saying that they've elected a party to government in the form of the Conservative Party that had the manifesto commitment to deliver a referendum on our membership of the European Union. We then had that referendum, and the people said they wanted to leave.
Some of the people, Ben. Some of the people, not all the people by any means.
Well, no, but that's not how votes work. So.
Well, it is actually, that a referendum is not an election, is it?
No. But my point is, we had an election where the Conservative Party put in their manifesto the commitment to have a referendum. They were elected on that manifesto, and then there was a referendum in which, no, not 100% of the people, but the majority of the people voting in the referendum voted to leave, and so that has been a democratic process. Now,
all right, wait with me, Ben. Wait with me. I want to bring in Tom Cole, head of policy at the People's Vote. Ben is still with us. Tom, good evening to you.
Good evening.
We've had a load of votes, haven't we? Do we need any more votes? And if we do have another vote, Tom, to be quite honest, it's not really going to show much difference, even if it went the other way, but just by the amount that it went in the last one, nobody's going to be happy, are they?
Well, I think the key thing, and I agree with Ben on this, we do live in a democracy. It's the people who started this process back in 2016, and we believe it's the people who should be able to end this process as well. Democracy didn't start, nor did it end in 2016. We've seen changes in the opinion polls. We've seen a swing towards people saying, actually, hang on a sec, all the promises that were made by the side which won in 2016 haven't materialized. Brexit is a complete mess. There's a complete impasse in Parliament. And in the end, the people themselves should be able to have a say at the end of the process. I think that's only fair in a democracy. The democracy didn't stand still in 2016. Ben? People are allowed to change their minds.
Yeah, well, clearly, in order to do that, a major political party needs to stand with a manifesto commitment of having a second vote, and they need to be elected. That's the part that's missing. And of course, we've had.
Well, how do we get through this then, Ben? We can't just. I don't imagine you believe that we should just leave with no agreement with the European Union. That would be a bit stupid, or maybe you do think that's the way to go. I don't know.
Well, I think the problem has been, and this is a problem with referenda, is that Leave won, but we didn't get a Leave supporting Prime Minister and a Leave supporting government, and of course we don't have a Parliament that is representative of the Leave vote. So we have a Parliament that's about 70% Remain supporting.
And you have nearly half the population who don't want to leave either. You might even have more than half the population by now, Ben, that don't want to leave either.
But you keep saying this, but of course we had.
Yeah, but you can't make people want something they don't want. So you're in a situation, and had it gone the other way, Ben, you'd have been shouting just as much as the others.
Yeah, but we've had the vote, and the people voted to leave. So you cannot ignore that. You also cannot ignore.
Well, you can, because the vote. I'm sorry, but it's not that cut and dried, is it? Because we can't agree a deal, and nobody voted to mess the country up.
The people want to leave.
No, they don't want to leave. Some of the people want to leave. Tom,
yes, but
tell
that's
him.
how democracy works.
Tom,
Look,
sort this out.
You can't have a situation where a government is formed or you have half a leader because half the people.
Sorry, Ben, I've heard all this rubbish before. It doesn't work this way. It's not democracy, Ben. It's not democracy. It's only democracy because you think you won. People, Tom,
people voted to leave.
Shush, Ben. Ben, shush a minute, Ben, or I'll cut you off.
I think one of the key things in the people's vote is that, like I said at the beginning, the people started the process in 2016. And there's nothing anti-democratic at all. Anyway, in fact, it's more democratic to go back to the people and say, do you endorse what has been negotiated? Now, I don't remember in 2016 anybody ever talking about the Northern Irish backstop or the fact that there would be a transition period. That was never mentioned anywhere. And even if, obviously, the deal was rejected in a big way by Parliament this evening, it's understandable. I mean, Brexit is an entire mess. It was promised on premises.
But Ben says this is
democracy.
The people voted to leave. Come on, Tom.
Of course, the people did vote to leave in 2016. The government had a mandate to negotiate Brexit. They have, we're how many days is it now? We're 2.5 weeks away from the 29th of March, and it is a complete and total mess. People were not promised a mess. I don't remember ever vote leave or leave.eu saying we've been in the mess that we're in today. And the sad reality of it is that we are.
So yeah, well, we haven't had a leave government. When David Cameron left office, he said, "I'm resigning because a Brexit result requires a Brexit government." We've never had a Brexit government. We've had a Remain Prime Minister. We've had a Remain.
So what do we do about this, Ben? What do we do about it?
Well, I think that it's very simple. The process is set out by the EU treaties. And
Ben, give me the bottom line, Ben, because I've run out of time. What do we do about it?
On March 29th, we leave the European Union. That's what the people have voted for. If you want to have another vote on it, a major political party has to stand on that basis and be elected to government. That's
all right, Tom, what do you think about that?
Well, I don't remember anybody ever being told that the UK was going to leave the European Union on the 29th of March. I mean, now, obviously, the United Kingdom government triggered Article 50 on the 29th of March 2017, but again, that date was never prescribed in the 2016 referendum. And I disagree with Ben that a leave government, or let's call them a leave prime minister or an MP who voted leave in 2016, would have really been able to negotiate anything better. The bottom line was, the minute that we voted for Brexit, we put ourselves in a position of weakness vis-a-vis an entity which was much stronger than we were, was united from the word go, had this strong and clear interest of protecting their interests. They're bigger than we are. We, unfortunately, from our point of view, whether you voted leave, whether you voted remain, we are smaller than the European Union in 27. We are always going to get a worse deal from them. And unfortunately, this is essentially going to be what things are going to be like for us if Brexit does go ahead.
What, Tom?
When we're dealing with the likes of the United States, the likes of China, we will end up being a rule taker. That's right. No one voted to be a rule taker.
Guys, I want to bring Liana in, who is here. She's the head of Yahoo Finance in the UK. How do you feel about all of this?
So there's two things to it. So yes, I mean, there was a referendum which technically wasn't legally binding. They didn't have to go ahead with it, but they did on the people's will. And it was a slim majority. There's a few factors in this that I really want to point out, is that how, in terms of people would feel that there should be a second vote, because there were a lot of huge factual inaccuracies being perpetrated through the Leave campaign, which endorsed promises that was proven to be false, i.e. Brexit bus stuff. And then on the second front, I mean, again, it was either to leave or to stay. It wasn't to say we're going to crash out with a deal, wreck the economy, or it didn't say, oh, we're going to have a deal that involves this Irish backstop and things like that. It's so much more nuanced. So I would say, especially if you are a leave voter, wouldn't you want to have a say in what kind of leave means? Or does that mean just absolutely not? It doesn't matter what happens to everyday person on the street, whether it happens to their job or economy. Does that still negate any inkling of going forward with a second vote?
Ben?
Well, I mean, again, Yahoo is an organisation that supports Remain, and so you've got two Remainers here arguing with one Brexiteer, and I know
We're not.
James,
We're actually independent, and we actually
Remain
have a
as well.
360 in terms of the news. We actually have Leave people writing for us just as well as Remain.
You're not independent. I've read your stuff. I've heard what you've just said, and your position is actually an extreme position because you're saying that there was false information coming from the Brexit campaign side. Well,
yeah, there's a UK investigation into it under the Ofcom as well.
Was it not David Cameron that talked in terms of there being a World War III? Was it not the governor of the Bank of England, under the instructions of George Osborne, that said that a Brexit vote would cause a recession? Of course, those things haven't happened either. This is what happens.
Brexit hasn't happened yet.
Discourse. Politicians make a lot of claims.
Ben,
some of them are true, some of them are not.
Ben, I asked a couple more staunch Brexiteers to come on the programme tonight, and they've hidden away because they know they sound a bit ridiculous. But in the interest of balance, listen, Ben.
The people that sound a bit ridiculous, we seem to win a lot of votes.
You haven't won a lot of votes. But if you want to know...
Well, we won the referendum, and we won the general election.
Ben, all right, don't get too worried, Ben. It's not going to work the way you want anyway. My colleague Julia Hartley-Brewer, who does the very successful breakfast show here on Talk Radio with huge audience, of course, is a very staunch Brexiteer. In interest of just a little bit of balance and to make you feel good, Ben, I would like to play that little bit of Julia again for Ben. And so if you can find it here. And this is what she said this morning, which did wind me up and make me very angry because I thought it was complete rubbish. But in the interests of balance, I'd like to play it to you now, Ben, and then come back after we take a quick break after that. Should we take the break first? I think we'll take the break first, Ben. Stay with us. Tom, stay with us. Leanna's here in the studio. And we will play a bit from Julia and then come back and try and find out if there is ever going to be a happy ending to all of this.
100% whale, 0% blubber.
The James Whale Show on Talk Radio.
I find it extraordinary that she will sit next to Jean-Claude Juncker, the European Commission President, as he says there will be no third chance. There will be no interpretation of the interpretations and no further assurances on the reassurances. And then he tweeted, the choice is clear. It is this deal or Brexit may not happen at all. I despair that our elected representatives, let alone the Prime Minister of this country, is willing to be treated like this and spoken to like this. This is beyond parody in terms of the willingness of our elected representatives on all sides to cower in the face of European Union bully boy tactics. We are a proud trading nation. We are one of the most important nations in the world, one of the biggest economies in the world. We are able to go it on our own. Let's cut our losses, including that 39 billion quid, and let us walk away with our heads held high. This is not a compromise agreement. This is not a deal that can do this country justice, and it's not a deal that in any way actually represents what any Leave voter actually voted for in June 2016. It is time to walk away and save what is left of our national pride.
Well, I replied to that earlier. I won't inflict that on you again. My very good friend Julia Hartley-Brewer, she's got it so wrong with Brexit. Ben Harris-Quinney is the chairman of the Bow Group. They are an organisation who wish to leave as soon as possible. I'm sure you would agree with my friend Julia, who presents the breakfast show.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important points that Julia has continued to make over the last few years is her despair at the fact that we don't have a Brexit government and a Brexit Prime Minister, and actually, worse than that, we have a Prime Minister who is extremely weak, shows very few leadership credentials, and is certainly not someone that Brexiteers support, which is often attributed to us. You know, you said, "Oh, Brexit is clearly a disaster."
Well, it is.
Well, you know, if you're talking about Theresa May's handling of Brexit, I wouldn't disagree with you, James.
You see, my political hero, I have to be honest, is Margaret Thatcher, and I think had Margaret Thatcher still been in charge, we would never be in this situation. But there we are.
I would concur.
Okay. Tom Cole, what do you think about that? I mean, despair? Are you despairing of that? I share the despair, but in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing is a complete and utter mess. And I think, it's been that pretty much ever since the triggering of Article 50 almost 2 years ago. It was a very narrow 48% win for the Leave campaign in 2016. And my first reaction was, okay, I'm not happy with this, but let's give these guys the benefit of the doubt. And they've proved throughout the entire course that they've been completely and totally incompetent. I don't think it would have made any difference if there'd been a prime minister in place who had voted leave. I mean, we look at people like Boris Johnson, Davis, who are completely incompetent. We've gone through 3 Brexit secretaries, all of whom voted for Brexit. The thing is a complete and utter mess. I think what this proves is that when you try putting yourself in a position of weakness, which is what Brexit is doing to the country, do not be surprised with the end result. You're going to end up in a weaker position. You end up being a rule taker, having been in a position of a rule maker, having set up all EU rules, having no say over them for the entirety of the transition period, if indeed the deal eventually goes ahead. And then if it doesn't go ahead and you ended up with a no-deal Brexit, one organisation with whom you want to have your number one deal, the EU, is going to be in no position at all to offer you a kind deal because you're left with no deal whatsoever, which is terrible for us but also bad for them. And you'll be in a position of having to accept essentially every single rule which the likes of the US and China, when they come along trying to offer you a trade deal, you will have no choice. They will have you over a barrel. I mean, what this demonstrates is that actually inside the European Union, we actually had a pretty good deal. Our economy was growing really well. New trade deals coming on stream with the likes of Japan. There are trade deals being negotiated with Australia and New Zealand. Why on earth are we throwing all this away? It's absolutely bizarre. And this is why I think we should be able to go back to the people on this.
Ben, last word with you, Ben Harris.
Well, Tom's quite wrong about that. We haven't, as I've said many times before, we haven't had Brexiteers in power. Our vision is completely different to the vision of this government. I think this Parliament and the last few parliaments have been very low calibre, but we are where we are. And in terms of trade deals with Japan, with Australia, with New Zealand, all of those deals are there for the taking for the United Kingdom, and better deals
on
than
lesser terms
with the European Union. But the most important.
But Ben, hang on, Ben. That's an important point, isn't it?
On lesser terms, Ben, we will already get. The Japanese have already come out and said that the terms that they would offer us would not be as good as the terms which
all right, Tom, let Ben come back.
That's just the reality of international trade.
I spoke to the Japanese ambassador a few weeks ago, and there are some very exciting possibilities that we wouldn't have as part of the EU that we can have bilaterally with Japan.
Oh, come on, tell
including on immigration of Japanese people to the United Kingdom and vice versa. And so I wouldn't
companies pulling out then?
If we have the right people negotiating.
So let me just, Ben, hang on, Ben. I want to ask you a question. Ben, I want to know, all these Japanese people we're going to encourage into this country, are they going to come and pick the fruit and the apples and stuff like that?
Well, I hope that they will come in the high tech industries, in medicine. There are some, phenomenally talented people in Japan that I think the United Kingdom would benefit greatly from. And I also think there are some phenomenally talented people in the United Kingdom that Japan would benefit from. But to come
and what
back
about
to
those phenomenally talented people in the European Union that were here anyway? What about those?
Well, I'm a strong believer that those that have come to the United Kingdom under the Schengen Plus rules should have the right to remain in the United Kingdom, because those were the rules at the time, and I certainly don't think that people from the EU should be sent back. And of course, new people from the EU that want to come in the future, new people that want to come into the country in the future will be able to apply for immigration just like anyone else. They just won't have an advantage over the rest of the world that want to come to the country. I think that's right and that's fair. But the important thing is...
What would you say to the people who live... What would you say to the people... Let's forget democracy for a while. I mean, we live in a democratic country. That's why we're having this discussion, because we are democratic. What would you say to those British people who live in Europe, who may well find that it is going to be more difficult for them to live in Europe?
Well, I've lived all over the world myself. I've lived in Europe. I don't think that is the case. Spain has just said that it will guarantee healthcare for UK citizens living in Spain, which was one of their chief concerns, even in the case of a no-deal Brexit. And I think there'll be a reciprocal arrangement. There are a lot of people from Europe living in the UK. There are a smaller proportion of UK citizens living in Europe, and I that's one of the things I'm most confident about. I think even this government will be able to sort out an equitable negotiation for those citizens. But to come back to the democratic point, because it is important, you said yourself we are Democrats. Our personal opinions on this don't actually matter. What matters is that we honour the democratic process. And if Tom wants a second vote, he needs to elect a party to government that the British people want to see in government, and the British people need to endorse that second vote.
Could that be a government?
Of a general election.
All right. Could that be a government headed by Jeremy Corbyn?
It could, and indeed it would, because Labour have said that their policy is now to hold a second vote. So if they win the next general election on that basis that they want a second vote and the people endorse it, we're a democracy, and that's how it works. And
do you think a Jeremy Corbyn government, a very socialist government led by Jeremy Corbyn, you think that will be good for the economy of this country?
No, of course. No, I obviously won't support a Jeremy Corbyn government. But what I'm saying is, if the people of the United Kingdom want to go a certain way, they voted for Brexit, they voted for a Conservative government, but in future they may want to change that decision. I have to respect that as a Democrat. I don't want a Jeremy Corbyn government. I don't think there will be a Jeremy Corbyn government, because I don't think the people do want that. Of course, we had the 2017 general election where the Lib Dems stood on the basis of overturning the referendum result, and they were completely wiped out. So, no, I will campaign for small C Conservative candidates. I will campaign for Brexit. But if I lose, I will accept the result. And that's what the Remainers refuse to do. They refuse to acquit the democratic process.
Right.
We are a democracy, and that's the most important thing. That's the most important.
And democracy didn't start to end on the 23rd of June 2016, Ben.
Guys, both of you, I have run out of time. Ben, thank you very much indeed. Tom, thank you. I will invite you both back in. I'd love to have a programme between myself and Julia Hartley-Brewer and a couple of other people. Maybe we could get Ben and Tom involved in that as well.